Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 5. This one was called Feel Her Love. We are still in Seattle, and we are spending time with Ellie and Dina and some other people that like to hang out in Seattle. Tom, I think I was semi critical of the last episode, so once again, I'm going to give you the floor to express, as the gamer in the group, how you enjoyed this episode.
I enjoyed it. I thought there were some cool elements. I like the idea that they're bringing in the concept of spores, which was very heavy in both the first and second game. I
Love
like how
spores,
they
Tom. Love them. Love the idea of them. We should deal with them more in life. Go on.
couldn't agree more. There were some interesting things where they kind of changed parts of the game in terms of kind of where the characters kind of started their journey, but based off the end of this episode, I think you kind of got the characters back in line to where they are in the game, like specifically Tommy and Jesse, which we can kind of talk through. But I still think there's some fun stuff kind of going on in the show. The kind of bit that we get with Ellie at the end and like kind of going true revenge mode is notable, and obviously the big cliffhanger ending. We're probably going to get some flashbacks, or maybe Joel actually is still alive. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know what to do with a half a second flashback. I was a little bit thrown off by that. I do enjoy the spores, but I think you had mentioned the spores are prevalent in the game from the beginning, and so this is kind of bringing something that they did not use in season 1, and they are introducing it in season 2, correct?
Yeah, and I think the whole idea, and the showrunner said as much in the first season, where you can't really have your main actors wearing gas masks all the time when they're dealing with some of these scenes. So while it works in a video game, it doesn't work as well in the show. But I like the introduction of it here, and they kind of even expanded on kind of how the concept of spores works here in the show, which we'll get to it once we get to the scene.
Sure, that's fair. The guy watched Masters of the Air and realized Band of Brothers with oxygen masks in a B-24 or B-17 isn't as compelling. I can understand
Exactly.
why he decided not to mask everyone up. I think that's about the time Tom Hardy bowed out of this project. He was like, oh, no spores, no gas masks.
No
So-
gas mask.
Yeah, so no one's going to run around going, why does he wear the mask? Because he's Tom Hardy and he doesn't like to act with his own face. That's why. Problem solved. Tom, that's a Christopher Nolan movie. Should we name other Christopher Nolan movies just to bring it
Yeah.
all back around?
You'll have to go to our old pods to get the list.
There's a list out there. All right, so let's spend some time in Seattle. This one started off a little bit confusing for me because we only saw this Han Rahan for a short period, but she's the one that Isaac blew the guys up in front of and then joined what became WLF. And they're all in a hospital. And is she a major character in the game?
No, she's kind of introduced, I think, when they kind of added more to Isaac's background. I think she's kind of introduced as a character here. But I guess number 2 for Isaac, a lieutenant. I don't know how the hierarchy works here, but definitely seems pretty high up.
Yeah, I think he's a chief and she's a major general. And then everyone else is privateers. So, so not in the game.
Not in the game. Nope.
Not in the game. Okay. Having this discussion with this Sergeant Elise Park, and we find out, we get the backstory of they were clearing a basement, and it turns out it's the building they're in. They were clearing the basement of the building they're currently in, and that's where the patrol ran into spores, and we get this, it's in the air. So this is them reintroducing this. Tom, I don't know how you feel about like rooms being sealed, like the air you breathe, but if something's like floating around downstairs, I guess she makes a point like, hey, none of us, it doesn't come up here because none of us have gotten sick at this point, but is that something you really want to chance?
Yeah, I mean it's questionable. Like just trying to what do? They take like iron to the door and then just weld it shut. I don't know how well that's gonna work with air. I also don't know how well like an open elevator shaft is gonna do with some of these spores kind of coming through. But they do give you at least a little bit of exposition to say, okay, it's safe, but we're not gonna leave this building because the hospital is too important to us, which is fair enough. It is interesting to note here where they say like the basement 1, I think they cleared that. B2 is where they had the spores, and they make mention of like a sub-level 3 of this basement where like the first quarter set patients were admitted to this hospital. which we don't visit basement 3, but the idea of like the infection potentially doing stuff down in there for 18 years plus could be interesting for later on.
Sure. Do you think basement 3 is overkill? Do you think they delved too deep, Tom, and awoken something? Something made of shadow and flame, maybe a Balrog? Is this
a Mines of Moria situation?
Yeah, probably.
Could be.
So we are back in the hospital where this all first started? These were first cordyceps patients. Is that what
just
we're
like in
led to believe?
Seattle?
Okay, just
yeah,
in Seattle. Okay, not in general. Got it. Got it. Do you think after the like spores became like open knowledge to the group, half of them are like, we should really wear masks, and the other half were like, I don't want to wear a mask. Spores aren't real. Do you think that happened amongst
I think it probably
the people?
did. They might have had the same argument that Jackson did.
Sure. And all of this is brought to a close with the sad fact that we find out that Elise Park's son, Leon, was the one that was leading the patrol and was like, seal us in, which, I don't know, pretty sad.
My wife's first response was, Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Since this episode takes place on Mother's Day, and they probably clearly knew that. There's even a scene a little bit later on where I think when Ellie and Dina go into that building, there's like a card on the desk that says Happy Mother's Day. So, yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Sure.
But the way this scene was shot, I thought was really cool and adds some backstory that I don't think is in the game of, kind of the opposites of Joel, right? Where Joel was given the opportunity to kind of sacrifice Ellie for the greater good. And in this instance, she does. Like, she realizes to be able to save everybody else here in this hospital, in this building, she's kind of sacrificing her son and sealing her in there. So I kind of like that parallel.
Yeah, I would argue it sounded like him over the radio was like, seal us in. So he made the choice for himself, but she had to make the hard choice of enacting it. So yeah, that is an interesting parallel. We should mention this is day 2 in Seattle. The show very clearly showed us this. So I guess there is a time lapse between when we lose Leon and then later on in this episode when they find Leon again, and he's, I don't know, what's the term, ripe? He's half mushroom? I don't know. But some time has lapsed between this and Seattle day 2, correct?
Yeah, and I think, again, this whole Seattle day 1, Seattle we got from the last episode, now day 2, I think is more of a video gameism because you're kind of playing as Ellie for each of these days, and there's kind of like these big, set pieces that kind of leave you off to start the next day. So I don't know how much time has elapsed from Leon going down there. I'm not sure if it matters too much, because I would also argue like one of the other bodies they see, maybe we'll get to it later, but one of the other bodies they see kind of spitting out spores seem to be wearing like scrubs and stuff. So maybe like that was somebody that was there in the hospital way back when. I don't know.
Sure. Zach Braff or maybe Dr. Cox, probably.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Dina and Ellie still hanging out in this like music hall building that was, I guess, a radio station. Is that what it was?
No, this is like a theater, essentially, is where they're at.
Got it. And then she is listening to the radio, and she's jotting down all the radio traffic because she's trying to figure out how to get to Abby's team. And
really putting those Dora the Explorer skills to work.
Yeah. We have a conversation about, I believe, triangulation during this time. And I've got some questions, but it's okay. We're just trying to find a safe route to the hospital. Tom, I know I missed the last guitar playing scene. I know that it was just a clear miss for me. It just didn't hit for me. All I want to say is that in this episode, it also didn't hit for me. I did not understand this. She's like, essentially Dina calls her dumb, and she's like, cool, I'm going to go explore. And then Ellie goes to this like beautifully lit stage where we have power and everything's great. The guitar is mostly in tune. It takes like 2 strums. She plays, stops, and then Dina, who just told her to go away not 2 minutes ago, shows up and is like, hey, I solved it. What happened here? Was I supposed to be weeping, or was the show like, hey, you remember how you liked that last guitar scene? We're going to give you one more. What did I miss, Tom? Help me out.
I mean, I still think that the show's doing itself a bit of a disservice by not showing you some of these flashbacks with Joel and kind of like why playing the guitar means so much to her, because it is something that Joel taught her. And they've said as much in the show, but it's going to be so much more impactful, which I believe they're going to do in the next episode, is do more of these flashbacks of why she likes to play the guitar. And then obviously the line that she says here, like, if I ever were to lose you. Like, she can't even kind of get the first set of lyrics from the song, which is Future Days by Pearl Jam. She gets that much out and can't kind of control her emotions here. So,
okay, so you've brought up a good point, and I don't want to harp, I don't want to criticize, but it's interesting that since you have played the game, you realize, like, the importance of the guitar playing.
mm-hmm.
As someone who's just watched the show, I think it's been mentioned that, like, and he took the guitar from her, was like, oh, this needs to be restrung. But, like, I don't think we've ever seen a lesson. We've never seen any of that. And so you're drawing from the game that these, like, this hits you. I will just say, as someone who's just watched the show, it's a little bit jarring, and I just don't understand what they're getting at. So I appreciate you explaining it to me, but I do think they're missing here. And if, like, they do a big flashback in an episode or two, and it's, you know, all about him teaching her guitar, I don't think I'm going to, like, retroactively go back and feel these episodes. I'm not going to be like, oh, man, when she was on the stage, that's what this was all about. But maybe I'm just not a very deep person, Tom. Maybe I'm shallow. Shallow, you know? That was a movie about music. That's something.
A beautiful duet. You want to sing that right now?
No, I do not. I already did. I gave it my best shot, Tom.
Yeah, I could be wrong here, but I think the video game even starts with, like, Joel kind of coming into Ellie's bedroom and kind of teaching her guitar. I can't remember what song is sung, but, like, immediately when the game starts, it makes that guitar bit impactful. So again, I'm not quite sure. Like, maybe it will pay off, maybe it won't for the non-gaming audience, but certainly didn't with you. So
sure. And Dina shows up and she's like, I solved it. She sees Ellie up there with the guitar on stage, and I don't know, maybe Dina didn't enjoy the last show, because she doesn't stop and she's like, oh, play something. You know, you found another guitar, let's hear it. She's just like, hey, let me tell you about the travel route of these patrols and how there's a big unpatrolled rectangle in the middle, and we're going to sneak through it.
Yep.
And
time to get reckless, baby.
Yeah. And then they throw in this conversation about, like, because they're trying to figure out the scars. And the only correlation Dina can come up with is she's like, hey, do you know who the Amish are? It's like the scars don't use electronics, because they talk about how openly these patrols are talking. And so she relates them to the Amish. I guess how much interaction... There's very minimal interaction between Dina and Ellie and the scars at this point. So them just trying to pick up kind of knowledge of what's happening is probably true to the game as well.
Yeah, and I think my wife had brought up the same concept of, like, just not necessarily loving the idea of the seraphites or scars. And, I mean, without giving away anything, I think they're kind of just like faceless monsters kind of at the beginning of the game. As you kind of get a little bit later on.
You mean like all of humankind, Tom? We're all just faceless monsters, you know?
Well, and it's like so many of these groups, like maybe they started out by just, feeling the love of this prophet and the lady, and then had good intentions. Sure. But it's like, as we've seen in this world, everything just kind of morphs to tribalism and dehumanizing everybody and violence, right? Because as we see a little bit later, when we get to, like, this scars, like, execution site, as they're kind of walking down the street, it's essentially the exact opposite of this scene from the last one, where the scars were kind of disemboweling and hanging the wolves from the rafters. Now the wolves are doing the same kind of thing and, like, taking them and putting them next to this sign that they kind of, like, worship, if you will. So it's just this violence breeds violence kind of concept. Sure.
So you think they started out with, like, feel her love, and then they were like, please won't you feel her love? And then they were like, we will make you feel her love. And then they're like, we will make you feel her love with hammers. And then that's kind of where it progressed to.
I think so. Vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan and Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan and Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
Speaking of vicious cycles, I cannot get past the fact that we have 2 adventurers here that are walking down the middle of a street in broad daylight, talking so loudly, and this is like they come across the Fear Your Love thing. There's an execution site, so clearly violence is happening. Those bodies were not that old, and these 2 are just like, let's chat. And then Dina is like, let me tell you about my childhood. And I don't know what it's like in the game, but this feels like an environment with like stealth is important, like moving at night, moving with cover. I don't want to get like weird tactical on things, but I find it a little bit strange that they're like, the show is telling you, hey, we're in the middle of like 2 factions fighting. There's a lot of violence and we've got to get from here to that hospital. Oh, we're going to walk just down the street and talk loudly and like have what is supposed to be like kind of an emotional, touching moment where Dina shares her childhood. I found this a little bit strange, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point because they make a point of Dina being much smarter than this to be walking in the middle of the street. And they say they need to be able to do this trip during the day so they can get to this rectangle building at night. So, I mean, that's fair enough. But yeah, you'd imagine they'd be hunking around cars, being a little more stealthy, or the second that they see this, they would, head for cover or find a building. So I'm kind of with you, but it gives the characters a chance to be able to tell this story. And I think Dina's backstory of like her family being killed or kind of like her first kill, I think what they kind of pick up in the conversation because Ellie never asked her like what her first kill was. Certainly very brutal and I think similar to the game, but again, just mirroring the brutality of kind of Joel's death. And like Dina's essentially giving her an out here of saying, like, listen, we can go back here. Like, I will continue with you. If I die, that's on me. It's not going to be on you because I would have the same feeling if this happened to, my family. But again, like we see this maybe a super brief moment where Ellie thinks about it, but again, chooses vengeance and justice.
Right. And there, yeah, to your point, there's a mirroring of Dina saying, hey, I understand, like, I would not have stopped until I avenged my family if I hadn't done it immediately. And so it was an interesting conversation. It's just interesting that in all of this, we're doing it in the middle of daylight in the street. And then this is also, I think, preceded by as they're walking, Ellie turns to Dina and goes, is this safe? And I was like, no, Ellie, this is not safe. Like, what kind of question is that? If I was Dina, I'd be like, let's go back to the one where you're like, you're not used to schooling or whatever. However she put that, you're like adverse to education. I was like, no, Ellie, it's not safe. Why are you asking her that? So I found that whole thing a little bit just out of place. But this all leads to us getting to this building at night, and we have the conversation, which when these parts of the show happen, I just think of the video game immediately, where she's like, listen, no shooting. If we shoot, it's going to bring everyone down on us. And I was like, okay, cool. This was a stealth mission level where you couldn't shoot anyone and you had to just knife everyone. And I thought that was a little bit funny. But creepy abandoned buildings, Tom, they're like my least favorite place to sneak around and not be able to shoot anything.
Yeah, and the game is no fun when you have to deal with, like, it's one thing when they introduced this one stalker early on, but now when they're dealing with, like, a 7, 8, 9, 10, I don't know how many in this room, it was super creepy. And I thought it was shot really well, right?
Oh, yeah,
like,
definitely.
the glowing eyes of these infected, and then kind of, like, hiding behind these boxes. It was great.
I did think it was very creepy. I appreciated there was, like, one, and then there are two, and then they turn around and there's just a ton of them. I don't understand. I enjoyed this scene, and I've never been in this situation, Tom. I know I talk a big game. I've never been surrounded by stalker infected in a warehouse with my lover. But this whole thing where Ellie's like, listen, I can be bit, you can't. It's like, yeah, you can only be bit so many times. Like, you may not get infected, but you have only so much blood, and, like, biting causes blood. And
I think Dina says as much. Like, yeah, you can be bit a bunch, but you can still be ripped apart.
Right. And this leads to an action scene where I just, like, they pitch us these two characters as, like, they can take care of themselves. In fact, beginning of the season, they go into that grocery store, and it's like a joke to them because they know how to take care. I understand this is, like, a smarter infected, but Dina running to the cage, she shoots all of her ammunition and then acts like she's never reloaded a gun before, which I found very surprising because Dina is extremely capable. And I don't know if this was just like we've run into a enemy we haven't run into before, so we're kind of panicked. But I didn't need Jesse to come in and save them. I felt like that was not how... It's not what I want for Ellie and Dina, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I feel like these stalkers were, like, jumping out of way of bullets. I think at one point they kind of pulled the Velociraptor move, where, like, one of them was making eye contact with Ellie, where another one comes from the side. I thought that was great.
And she said, clever girl. She's a clever girl. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
But, yeah, I mean, this happens in the game in terms of Jesse kind of coming in here. There's even, like, a moment where when Ellie is kind of saved and Jesse's kind of coming through the shadows, I feel like there's, like, a half an instance where Ellie thinks this might be Joel coming to the rescue. Like, she knows it can't happen, but she's kind of like this has happened before where somebody's kind of come and saved me like this. Obviously, as we find out later, she feels like, oh, we could have handled this, where clearly they could not have handled it, and they needed Jesse to save them. But again, the little bit difference in the game is that Dina stays at the movie theater when you kind of take off here. So you're kind of by yourself when Jesse kind of comes to the rescue and saves you as Ellie.
Interesting. Interesting. I do want to talk about what you just mentioned, where Jesse clearly saves them, and Ellie is, like, offended by it. And I understand there's, like, a teenage, because she's 17, right? There is a teenage, like, hey, I want to be treated as an adult. But there is also a part where it's kind of obnoxious and unlikable. And I think if Ellie every once in a while would be likable, then maybe this wouldn't be so abrasive. But when she's, like, trying to tell Jesse they don't need help, but he's clearly just saved them, I don't know. I felt like this was a jumble of we brought in Jesse to save, but I wish they would have just gotten themselves out of it. But if he is going to save them, you know, maybe throw a thank you his way. You know, he did kind of help out. It would have been great if Ellie was, like, you know, bitten 100 times and she still had the stalkers, like, clamped onto her, and she was like, I'm fine, I've got it, don't help me, I'll take care of it, it's just an arm, it's just a flesh wound.
I think, like, Dina immediately comes to her rescue by saying, like, she's not bit, when obviously clearly she probably was bit a couple times as these guys were all around her. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. Like, I feel like in the game they do a better job of Ellie being more, like, independent and still kind of a jerk at times. But I feel like in the show, the way kind of Bella Ramsey acts it, sometimes it does go a little bit too far. I don't think it's necessarily them as an actor, but more so like some of the writing and where they kind of want to go with the character. But Yeah, I'm kind of with you. But I do like, so Jesse kind of comes in, kind of saves the day, and then he kind of makes mention of both him and Tommy coming to the rescue here. And they essentially followed Ellie and Dina the day after. And so they kind of snuck out of camp the same as they did because they went to kind of go save them. So now we got Tommy and Jesse back in play.
Sure, yeah. And once again, I appreciate it. They go into the park. They ditch the WLF. They go into the park. They don't really realize that now they're in more danger. Jesse is like sneaking and moving, and Ellie just keeps like talking at him. And they're like, I was just like, hey, guys, let's all just whisper for a little bit, or maybe get out of danger before we start having these arguments. They just seem to talk at full volume so much. And I'm pretty sure part of this game is like, don't make noise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so.
Yes.
Especially in these sequences with the scars.
Yeah, because then we start getting the scars whistling, and you realize why the WLF don't go into the park. We witness a hanging and disembowelment. Didn't care for this at all, Tom.
No.
And Tom, I don't want to brag about how brave I am, but when scenes like this happen, someone in my household goes, I'm not going to watch, tell me when it's done, which means I then have to watch and confirm when it's done. And I don't want to be. I want to be the little spoon, and I don't want to be the one that has to watch until it's all over. I'm just going to give everyone some advice. If you haven't watched this scene, just wait until the squelching, not to be confused with Diet Squelch, our sponsor, but when the squelching ends, when all the disembowelment stuff falls to the ground, that's when you can open your eyes again. And then crack open a Diet Squelch. Peach nectarine flavor. It's my favorite currently.
Oh, incredible. Yeah, this was a bit brutal. And this scene's taken directly from the game where you're, as Ellie, you kind of go up into this wooded area and you just kind of like essentially watch this happen. And there's not much you can do about it. It's brutal.
Sure. Oh, it's certainly brutal. And so's taking an arrow in the leg, which Dina... I don't know. Dina, I feel so bad. She doesn't want to really be here. She's like, I'm following my friend, and then all of a sudden, arrow in the leg. And you got to know that arrow's not clean, you know?
Did it kind of remind you of like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective? I think it was the second one where he's like, quick, throw me a spear. It throws it and just goes right into his leg.
Tom, anytime someone gets stuck with a leg, I immediately think of, and I don't even know that my mind says, hey, that's Ace Ventura. I just picture him doing the two hands by his leg and then to his other leg and going back and forth. So yes, that's what being a kid in the 90s will do to you.
But right when I saw this happen, like this is like, oh, okay, so they're using this as now an excuse to be able to take Dina back to the movie theater, and again, where she kind of was in the game, she never left once she kind of found out she was pregnant, and then wasn't safe for her to leave. I think there was a moment, and I can't remember when it was, but where Ellie does kind of confront her and say like, hey, this is silly. Like, what are we doing here? Why don't you go back and I keep doing this? And again, it's not, hey, we should both go back. We have a lot to live for. It's you should go back. She never really thinks to kind of go back. And it's even echoed here in this scene where I think she uses, like, she starts firing her weapon and tells Jesse and Dina to kind of run for it. I'll meet you back at the theater. And what does she do? Like, she makes a diversion, hides in that tree, and then sees the hospital. So instead of trying to go back to the theater and regroup, she chooses to go on to this hospital and continue down this path of vengeance.
Tom, I'm going to give you permission right now. If I ever take an arrow in the leg while we're in the middle of a revenge mission and you see your objective, you can leave me, all right?
Okay.
In fact, put an arrow in my other leg and just, I'll wait there for you until you come back with an arrow removal thing.
This is recorded, so
that's fine.
Holding you to it.
This is a legally binding contract if we're ever in this situation.
Now, what if my mission was just like get a Slurpee?
Well, if it's to get a Diet Squelch, Tom, grab two. That's all I'm saying. You know what? Bring one back to me and my lifeless body and just pour it on me. That's how I want to go. It's an interesting conversation. I think this is something the show did well, where you see Jesse like take care of Dina and like a friend would because she's wounded, and you see this moment where Ellie sees the hospital and she hesitates, she looks back, and it's not like the show could have done something where she's forced to go in this direction because of where the bad guys. But she's not necessarily completely safe, but she's in a position where she can make a choice to go back to take care of Dina and be with Jesse and Tommy, or seek revenge. And so, to your point, it is an interesting... And once again, I keep trying to find reasons to like Ellie, but maybe there is something about someone that's just so driven by revenge that maybe that makes them slightly unlikable. I don't know. But
yeah, it's
it was
a fair
an interesting
point. I mean,
choice.
it's with Joel and with Ellie. Like, are we really supposed to like Ellie? Like, I mean, I think there's all these characters throughout this show. There's certainly some redeeming qualities to a lot of them. Some maybe we haven't seen yet, but I think every character does have them. But this show, I don't think, is trying to push Ellie as this, saint or perfect person. Like, she's a vengeful person that is put in this situation and put in this world at her young age, trying to deal with this trauma.
Right.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
We have a guy that's just hanging out with his dog, and his dog clearly sees something, starts barking. Does this guy reach for a gun, Tom? No, he does not. He reaches for his old moonbeam, turns it on, starts looking around, doesn't trust this dog in a zombie-infested world. He's like, it's just a critter. They're like, oh, you still carrying a gun? He's like, nah, I just got a flashlight. Nothing ever happens out here. I mean, no one gets disemboweled and no one gets eaten by zombies, so we're pretty cool. Me and old Rufus over here are good. And
I think that was a gameism. Like, you can kind of escape these dogs by going through, because like they'll find your scent and track you, and it's super annoying in the game. But you can kind of go through these little like holes to get enough to get away.
There wouldn't be a hole small enough that my beefy little dog would not try to get to in order to. Oh man. Shout out to Bandit. What a great dog. All right, so Ellie sneaks in and finds Nora as if Nora was wearing a tracking beam and no one else was in this hospital or building.
Yeah, they yada this.
They yada this so hard, Tom. Which is fine. I don't need every TV show to be an hour and 20 minutes of real time. But I did find this when Nora walks in and she's like rinsing the rags because she's helping in the hospital, and Ellie's got the jump on her. I was like, oh, good for her. It didn't take long at all. So I liked what they did here with Nora, and honestly, I was typing the note that, Nora is actually sympathetic to Ellie's cause. Because Ellie is there, she recognizes her. Ellie is asking where Abby is, and Nora's like, listen, it was brutal what she did to him. Like, I can't forget about it. It's terrible. I was like, oh, this is it. And then she throws the cleaning alcohol at her and runs, and there's a lot of bad shooting. And I literally was writing in that, like, oh, Nora's sympathetic. And then I had to go, comma, not. And we moved on. But I thought this was an interesting play by Nora in order to get herself out of the room.
Yeah, she's finding like a means to kind of slow down the conversation and not have Ellie do anything kind of crazy, and then makes her run. And so much of this, like the dialogue, the kind of run and gun thing, this is all ripped straight from the game. Straight from the game.
They bring in a lot of red lights during this process. We have Nora going through the elevator shaft, landing in B2. We hear the Balrog awake. And the spores start to float across camera. The effect they use is, I mean, this whole episode was really well shot, just in terms of how it looked. And much like the guy that made Jurassic Park that killed everyone, they spared no expense, Tom.
Exactly. And I like so again, the spores are in the game, and, you know, just like we kind of see as she's kind of following Nora down here, there's like characters or clickers and stuff like essentially attached to the wall, and every once in a while one of these clickers will like come out of the wall and attack you, and it's terrifying. But the idea of like spores is just like there's mushrooms or cordyceps that are just shooting out the spores. But in here, I love the way they kind of did it, where the mushrooms or whatever, the fungi are like using the bodies and using their lungs to essentially push out the spores. And kind of like propagate themselves. I thought it was super cool visually and super neat touch.
Yeah, no, it was super cool. It looks great, and it reminded me of when Gob bought the marijuana and he's smoking it on the back patio, and Michael walks out, and then he has to release. And he's like, "Oh, it's cold out," pretending the smoke is his breath. Anyways, Arrested Development, folks. There you go. Drink. That's our one Arrested Development reference we will make this whole time. Red lights, Tom. Red lights. This was shot. Ellie behind that 9mm Beretta just about to gun Nora down. And this gives them that chance to have the dialogue about Nora explaining to Ellie that Joel killed everyone in the hospital, including Abby's dad, the one person that could cure us all. Because now I feel like in this moment, Ellie says, "I know," or she's aware. Explain, Tom.
Yeah, I think there's a lot revealed here. So I want to almost say that the use of the spores in this episode was just specific for like this moment, where it allows Nora to tell that Ellie is immune immediately, as opposed to a bite where you've got to wait for her to, you know, go to sleep for a while and then wake up and not be infected. So I feel like that was kind of big here, because then Nora like responds by saying, "You're the one that's like immune," and then kind of gives this whole spiel. But then Ellie's response saying, you know, "I know," that's telling, because we had thoughts in terms of the rocky relationship that Ellie and Joel kind of had at the beginning of this season that Ellie did know. And I think this is probably a confirmation that she did know, maybe not to the full extent, or maybe she's still trying to put on a brave face. I don't really know. But I would venture a guess we're going to get this in that flashback next episode.
So that's my question. So the thought would be in the flashback that we as show people don't know happened because they've hid it from us. And they didn't give us enough at the end of this episode to really like let us know that there was a deep conversation. My assumption is that there is a conversation they're going to show us where he told her about this. But to your point, she could also just be saying like she just doesn't want to give Nora the satisfaction of letting her know that she didn't know what Joel did. So I find that fascinating. I also found it very fascinating where Ellie finds this long L-shaped lead pipe and starts beating in Nora's legs. And by fascinating, I found it brutal and it was rough.
Yeah, and this whole time, right, she just keeps asking, like, where's Abby? Like, that is her sole focus, is taking out Abby, and obviously Nora is just kind of a means to an end here. But yeah, the idea of taking this pipe that is shaped very much like a golf club and her specifically, like, going after Nora's legs, just like Abby did against Joel, like, she's essentially becoming Abby in this moment and doing the same brutality and trying to kind of torture her for information. And, you know, whether she got the information is obviously, you know, to be determined, but a brutal scene. And I think kind of like there's no coming back from this from Ellie's perspective.
Sure. I did not recognize that she picked up the pipe because she had a choice of pipes, a lot of great pipes. A lot of people are saying they were the best pipes. And she happened to pick up the one that was shaped like a golf club. I did not make the correlation until on the third one when she shouted mulligan. and then she like hit her a fourth time, and she's like, that other one didn't count. And then Nora's like, I'm pretty sure you have to add a stroke. And then they discuss the rules of golf. But this is all cut with the shortest flashback, the shortest scene of any show ever. It was abrupt, and I didn't know what was happening. But it was Joel, Ellie, and he goes, "Hi, kiddo," and then credits. And I was like, what was that? Because
yeah, it was kind of, I was just going to say, it was kind of weird that they tagged this on. Like, I think they want to just essentially tell the audience that they didn't want to end on such a brutal note. But I would argue maybe they probably should have, because it's such a pivotal moment for Ellie to be able to do this kind of like more lighthearted, hey, kiddo, and call back to Pedro Pascal here and Joel. I mean, it's just setting up the next episode, but I don't know if it was needed.
Oh, it certainly wasn't needed because it didn't make any sense, and I don't know what they're trying to get at. If they're trying to remind us that Joel like used to be in the show and that we miss Pedro Pascal, they didn't have to do this. If Pedro Pascal has a mortgage and he's like, "Hey guys, like I get contractually this much if you show 0.5 of a second of me," and they're like, "Cool, man, we got you covered." I did not understand this. I did not understand this in the least. And so I feel like sometimes this show is doing things that gamers will recognize, but even in this case, you're confused, I'm confused. Like, give us a little bit more show.
Well, even
or
the
don't give us
timing-
anything. I would have been fine with like a cut to black. I would have been super sad. Were they like, oh, this show's so dark, let's show half a second of Pedro Pascal so everyone feels good, and then go to credits?
I mean, how good can you feel because you know the character's dead?
It didn't make me feel... Well, or is he, Tom? Or is he?
I know. Maybe he's actually alive. Yeah, I mean, the quick cut that we do get, it's of Ellie waking up on the bed that was, I think, her original room in Joel's house, because we have seen it before when she was kind of walking through. So we know the timing-ish of this. So this was before... maybe they had their kind of falling out and they were more on good terms. Like, hence the hi kiddo and her being a little bit more seemingly happy and the relationship was in a better state. So I'm sure we'll kind of pick right back up off of there the next episode, which I'm excited for because I do think the flashback stuff is very powerful and some really good storytelling that was integrated through the game. I would argue maybe it's a little bit too late now in the show because this is going to serve as the penultimate episode because there are only 7. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to see how they wrap up the season and just some of the choices they made and where we land on 7. To your point, they're splitting this game into a couple of different seasons, so I'm not expecting a real strong like conclusion, but I'm interested to see where we end up and what kind of cliffhanger they sucker us into at the end of season 2 to take us to season 3. Final thoughts, Tom, or should we just move to close?
No, like I said, I still think it's good television. I know I am certainly biased coming in as a gamer. I think if you were a gamer, there was a lot of hints in this episode of potentially things to come, specifically in the beginning of the episode and some of the things that they talked about in Spores in the hospital, which I think gamers are excited to potentially see explored. Probably won't be in this season. I would imagine be in next. And again, I still think there's some good stuff going on in this show. It's filmed incredibly well, better than a heck of a lot of stuff out there. So even though, I mean, I don't know, from your perspective, even though maybe hasn't been the greatest series of television for you, are you still enjoying it, or you feel like it's a little bit more of a slog now?
I would argue that there are not enough people in the show that I am rooting for and love. I mean, our main character is on kind of a brutal quest for vengeance. Her sidekick is fine. And so, we get probably 2 action scenes an episode. And then the rest of the stuff I kind of wonder about. So I wouldn't say it's a slog. I'm enjoying parts of it. But yeah, I think you have a deeper connection to it. And I think that's fair. It's a show based on a video game. And for the people that are coming, it's like, when the Halo TV series came out, and I said it should have won all the Emmys and all the Oscars, and, a lot of people disagreed, but that's simply because they've never played Halo before, because Halo wasn't a very popular game. But, yeah, so still enjoying parts of it, Tom, but there's definitely some stuff that I just wish they would have done differently. And part of that is it's a very dark show, just in terms of the material and the choices our characters have to make. And if the world on the outside was a happier place and I needed some darkness in my life, maybe this is what I would turn to. But it's just dark on all sides right now, Tom.
That's fair. Okay, maybe our next podcast is gonna be Golden Girls. Or does that get pretty dark? I've never seen it.
Yeah, I got a lot of issues with the politics of the Golden Girls, Tom. I don't want to get into it here. But anyways, they're always talking about the gold standard and how we never should have gone off of it and how bad fiat money is, you know, that kind of stuff. Anyways, for those of you that would like to talk about the gold standard and how our economy has been infected by mushrooms, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. You can rate and review us. We appreciate you listening, and we apologize for those that we've offended. Well, for those that Tom's offended. I remain unapologetic. Tom, what'd I miss?
Yeah, follow us on the socials at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. Let us know what you think of the show, because I am interested to hear kind of what people are thinking on it, whether they're the gamers or not. I enjoy talking through this show because, again, I think we do come at it from different angles, and I enjoy that we don't always have the exact same opinion. So let us know what you think. Shoot us an email, and yeah, like I said, I'm excited for the penultimate starting next week.
What's funny about this show is if you want to reinforce your opinion of it, you can go on the internet and find a reinforcement of your opinion. It's pretty there are gamers that love it and love what they're trying to do, and people that are coming in fresh that have relationship to these actors and actresses and they enjoy that part. And then there are the people that are diehard gamers where this it's like any lore, when you go too far, it's like the Lord of the Rings show and my feelings on that. You can go on the internet and find your people, and I don't think that's great. I think it's okay to watch something, find parts of it you enjoy, find parts you question. It doesn't, it is what it is. But yeah, I appreciate your perspective, Tom.
Yeah, it's a different medium. It doesn't have to be the same. And I would argue if you're a gamer and you don't think they're doing justice to the game, I would disagree with you, because I think they're making some twists and turns a little bit, but they are still so true to the source material that I still find it, even though it's a very dark show and dark themes, it's still incredible television.
What I found has helped me, Tom, is I hold an Xbox controller in my hand while I watch the show, and then when something happens that I don't like, I throw the controller at the screen.
It's a PlayStation game, so the Xbox controller won't work. You're just doing that for dramatic effect?
Well, now you've ruined it. Now you've ruined it completely. For Team Binge, I've been Julian.
And I've been Tom. Until next week, everybody.